All right, so are you ready to boost your English fluency?
Yeah, always.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into idioms and phrasal verbs, going way beyond the basics.
Yeah, even advanced learners can trip up on these.
They can be tricky.
They really can.
But think about it like this. You've got the grammar down pat, you've got a solid vocabulary, but now you really want to sound natural like a native speaker.
Right.
That's where these idioms and phrasal verbs really come into play. They're like those secret ingredients that just add so much flavor.
And you know what? We've got a fantastic selection for you today, pulled from a 3-hour workshop. We've condensed it down to like the juiciest, most essential parts.
Yeah, we're going to break down these expressions, look at all those little subtle nuances, and by the end of this deep dive, you'll not only understand them, but you'll be able to use them confidently.
Yeah, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
To actually use them.
Exactly.
All right.
So let's jump right in with an idiom that's all about approaching information with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
Take it with a grain of salt.
I love that one.
It's so good, right? So let's say you've got a colleague who's known for embellishing stories just a little bit. You might say something like, he tends to exaggerate, so take his stories with a grain of salt.
It's a really nice way to express caution, without like directly accusing somebody of, figging.
Right.
You're basically saying, yeah, I'm listening, but I'm also keeping in mind that this might not be the whole truth.
And it's so important, I think, especially these days where we're just bombarded with information from all sides.
Yeah, we have to be really careful about what we believe.
Right.
Take it with a grain of salt. It's like a little reminder to pause, think critically before we just accept anything as like the absolute truth.
That's so important. So let's shift gears a little bit to a more lighthearted idiom, spill the beans.
Oh, I love this one.
This is when someone reveals a secret,
Yeah.
often unintentionally, like that classic surprise party scenario.
Yeah, somebody let the cat out of the bag.
Right, it's usually used in a playful, kind of teasing way, not like a serious accusation.
It's like, oh, come on, you can tell me, I won't be mad.
Exactly. I think spill the beans is a perfect example of how idioms can inject humor into language.
Yeah, it's so much more fun than just saying reveal a secret.
Right.
It just adds that little bit of personality.
Okay, so next up we've got an idiom that's all about flexibility. Play it by ear.
Oh, this is a good one.
And this one comes in handy when you're not really sure what the plan is or, things are subject to change.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you're meeting up his friends for dinner, but the restaurant's packed.
Oh, yeah.
What do you say?
Let's just play by ear. We'll see if we can get a table or maybe try somewhere else close by.
Exactly. It's all about being adaptable and going with the flow.
Yeah, that's a really important skill to have.
So important.
Especially when things are, changing all the time.
Right. Playing it by ear lets you adjust those plans and make decisions as you go.
Makes sense.
Okay, so now let's talk about an idiom that's often used when someone's avoiding the main point or being a little evasive beat around the bush.
Oh, I don't like when people do that.
Have you ever noticed how some people just dance around a topic instead of getting straight to the point?
It's frustrating.
It is frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you're asking a friend about something kind of sensitive,
Right.
but they just keep talking about everything else except what you want to know.
You want to say, just stop beating around the bush.
Right. Tell me what's going on.
What's the deal?
Exactly. It's important, though, to pay attention to the context and the speaker's tone.
Yeah.
Sometimes people beat around the bush because they're uncomfortable or nervous.
Or maybe they're trying to protect someone's feelings.
Right. It's not always about being intentionally evasive.
Right.
Sometimes it's just about finding the right words or approaching a difficult conversation with sensitivity.
That makes sense.
That leads us to an idiom that's all about neutrality, sit on the fence.
Ah, yes.
This one describes someone who's hesitant to choose a side.
They can't make up their mind.
They just can't decide. So picture a heated debate, right? Two people are arguing passionately for these opposed viewpoints.
They're going at it.
But then there's that one person who's just sitting there undecided, carefully weighing those pros and cons.
They're on the fence.
They're sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
And you know what? It can be frustrating if you're looking for a clear commitment.
Yeah, I want to know what side you're on.
Right.
But sometimes, it's good to gather more information before you make a decision.
Right. Sometimes it's a sign of being thoughtful and careful.
Yeah, you want to consider all the angles.
Exactly.
Before you jump in.
Okay, let's move on to an idiom that I think we can all relate to, bite off more than you can chew.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
I know we've all been there, especially when it comes to like new challenges or those ambitious goals.
Yeah, it's that feeling of, oh, I can totally do this. And then you realize,
What have I gotten myself in?
I have way too much on my plate.
I remember once trying to learn 3 languages at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Talk about biting off more than I could chew.
Yeah, that's ambitious.
It was fun and challenging, but I quickly realized I needed to scale back.
Yeah, one at a time.
One at a time.
It's easy to get caught up in that initial excitement.
Right.
But we have to be realistic about our time and, what we can actually handle.
Biting off more than you can do can lead to burnout.
And stress.
And you might not even reach your goals.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better to start small, build a solid foundation, and then gradually take on more.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
And speaking of taking shortcuts, let's talk about an idiom that often has a bit of a negative connotation: cut corners.
Uh-oh.
This suggests doing something in a hasty or incomplete way to save time or money, but it can compromise quality.
Yeah, you end up sacrificing something important.
Imagine a construction company trying to finish a project quickly and cheaply.
Right, they might use cheaper materials.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
skip some safety checks.
And those consequences could be huge.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that sometimes it's worth investing that extra time and effort to do things properly.
In the long run, it pays off.
Now let's talk about trends. Jump on the bandwagon.
Oh, I see this all the time.
All the time, especially with like fashion technology, social media. A new trend pops up and everybody's doing it.
Everyone wants to be part of it.
It's that fear of missing out.
Yeah, that FOMO.
Right. But it's important to remember you don't always have to follow the crowd.
You can make your own choices.
Think critically and do what actually interests you.
Yeah, what aligns with your values.
Exactly. Okay, let's lighten things up again with a playful idiom: pull someone's leg.
Oh, I love this one.
This one's all about teasing in a good-natured way.
Yeah, just a little bit of fun.
Like, I'm just messing with you.
Exactly.
Imagine you're telling a friend this crazy story.
Right, and they believe you.
They totally believe it.
And then you're like, come on, I was just pulling your leg.
It's all about that delivery and the tone.
It's gotta be lighthearted.
Right.
Playful.
It's a great way to build rapport.
Yeah, it shows you're comfortable with each other.
Right. But make sure the other person knows you're joking.
Yeah, you don't want to cause a misunderstanding.
And finally, let's wrap up this first round of idioms with burn the candle at both ends.
This is a classic.
This one really captures that feeling of being overworked, stressed out, just exhausted.
Yeah, you're going nonstop.
Think of someone juggling multiple jobs, family responsibilities, and still trying to have a social life.
They're burning the candle at both ends.
It's a reminder that we need to find a balance and take care of ourselves.
We can't do it all.
Right. We need to prioritize well-being
Yeah, set boundaries.
and find ways to recharge.
And relax.
Okay, so that was our exploration of some amazing idioms. We covered skepticism, humor, flexibility, directness, neutrality, ambition, quality, trends, playfulness, and balance.
That was a lot.
It was a lot.
But we did it.
We did it.
And now, are you ready for phrasal verbs?
Oh, I am so ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's dive into those phrasal verbs. Let's start with hold off, which basically means to postpone or delay something. Like, we're going to hold off on making a decision until we have more information.
Yeah, it's like hitting that pause button.
Exactly. Giving yourself some time to think things through.
Gather more insights, maybe wait for a better moment.
Makes sense, right? Yeah.
It's a good one. All right, so next up, put someone up.
Okay, this one's all about hospitality, offering a place to stay.
Right. Imagine a friend's visiting your city.
You could say, hey, don't even bother with a hotel. I can put you up at my place.
Such a nice gesture.
It is. It's like making someone feel welcome and comfortable.
Exactly. Now let's get a little more nuance with come down to.
Okay, so this is used to highlight like the essential element of something.
Right, the core of a situation.
Yeah, like if you're analyzing a problem with lots of different factors,
Right.
You might say, ultimately, it all comes down to effective communication.
It's about cutting through the noise and finding what really matters.
Exactly, getting to the heart of the matter.
Okay, so next we got pull through, which conveys this idea of resilience and overcoming challenges.
Yeah, like when someone's going through something really tough.
Right, maybe a serious illness or a personal crisis.
You could say we're all hoping they pull through this.
It's like an expression of hope and support.
Yeah, you're acknowledging the difficulty, but you believe they can overcome it.
It's powerful. Now let's shift gears to a phrasal verb with a much more dramatic meaning: wipe out.
Oh, this one's intense.
Yeah, it usually refers to complete destruction or elimination.
Like think about a natural disaster.
A hurricane or a tsunami.
Yeah, you might say the storm completely wiped out the coastal towns.
It's a strong image. It emphasizes that devastation.
It really does. Okay, so how about a phrasal verb with multiple meanings: break into?
Okay, this one's tricky
It can be.
because it can mean a couple of different things.
Right.
So on one hand, it can refer to illegal entry.
Like someone tried to break into my car last night.
Right. But it can also mean entering a new field or profession.
Yeah, like she's trying to break into the music industry.
That's right. So context is super important here.
Yeah, pay attention to those surrounding words.
Figure out what they really mean, right? Set about.
This one implies a determined and purposeful approach to something.
Like when you're starting a new project.
Yeah, you might say, we're setting about to create a more sustainable business model.
It suggests a clear intention and a plan of action.
You're taking charge.
You're making things happen.
And last but not least for this round, step up.
This one often means taking on more responsibility or rising to a challenge.
Yeah, like in a leadership situation.
Imagine someone volunteers to lead a project when no one else will.
You could say he really stepped up and took charge.
It shows initiative and courage.
And a willingness to go above and beyond.
Okay, round 2 of phrasal verbs. Are you ready?
Bring it on.
Let's do it. Bring on.
Perfect example right there.
I know, right?
So bring on often means to cause something to happen, sometimes with negative consequences.
Right. Like stress can bring on headaches.
Lack of sleep can bring on fatigue.
Eating too much sugar can bring on a sugar crash.
It's all about cause and effect.
Right. Recognizing those consequences.
Okay, next up we have track down, which means to find something after a thorough search.
Like when you're looking for something specific.
Yeah, a rare book or a long-lost friend.
You might say, I finally tracked down that old photo album.
It takes effort and persistence.
Right. You don't give up until you find it.
Determination is key. Okay, so now for a phrasal verb that conveys a sense of gradual disappearance. Fade away.
I like this one.
Yeah, it's got a certain feel to it.
Right, like memories can fade away over time.
Enthusiasm can fade away if you don't nurture it.
And that excitement for a year trend can fade away when something new comes along.
Yeah, it's a reminder that things change.
Nothing lasts forever.
All right, so let's move on to map out, which is all about planning and strategizing.
Yeah, when you need a clear plan of action.
Like when you're preparing for a big project,
Or a trip.
you might say, we need to map out our travel route.
It's about creating a roadmap.
Visualizing those steps.
Anticipating those challenges.
Okay, and when it's time to get laser focused, we use zero in on.
Love this one. It's like narrowing down your focus.
Right, honing in on that one crucial aspect.
Like a team trying to solve a problem.
Yeah, they might say, let's zero in on the main cause of the delay.
You're blocking out distraction.
Concentrating all your energy on that one thing.
You ready for a fun one? Screw up.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
This is a casual way of admitting you made a mistake.
And usually a pretty big one.
Like, I totally screw up that presentation.
It's okay to laugh at ourselves sometimes.
Right, we're all human.
We make mistakes.
And last but not least, another multi-meaning phrasal verb, lay off.
Oh, context is key with this one.
It is, because it could mean a couple of different things.
Right.
On one hand, it could mean to terminate someone's employment.
Like the company had to lay off workers due to the recession.
Right. But it can also mean to stop doing something or to ease up.
Like, hey, lay off the junk food.
Or lay off the video games you've been playing all day.
So many possibilities.
So many possibilities. Wow, we covered a lot of ground with those idioms and phrasal verbs.
We did. It's amazing how much they can add to our language.
Right. They give it so much depth and color and personality.
I think what's really interesting is how they reflect our culture.
Yeah. It's like getting a glimpse into how people think and what they value.
And their sense of humor.
So for our listeners out there who want to master English, what are some key takeaways?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to try them out. The more you use these expressions in real conversations, the more natural they'll become.
Right. It's like practice makes perfect.
Exactly. It's like learning a new dance step. It might feel awkward at first, but the more you do it, the smoother it gets.
I love that analogy. And it reminds me, we can't just passively learn these expressions.
Yeah, you got to use them.
We have to actively integrate them into our language.
And another important thing is to pay attention to context. Idioms and phrasal verbs can have different meanings depending on how they're used.
Right. So you have to consider the surrounding words, the tone of voice, the whole situation.
It's like being a detective.
A language detective.
You gotta gather those clues to figure out the real meaning.
So what are some practical steps our listeners can take to really make these expressions stick?
One thing you can do is create your own examples using the idioms and phrasal verbs we talked about.
Okay.
Relate them to your own life, your work, your hobbies.
Make them personal.
Exactly. The more personal the connection, the easier it'll be to remember.
I like that. And what about immersing yourself in authentic English content?
Oh, that's huge. Movies, TV shows, podcasts, books.
It's like surrounding yourself with the language.
And pay attention to how native speakers use these expressions.
It's like getting a free language lesson.
And remember, learning a language takes time.
It's a journey.
There's always something new to discover.
So embrace the challenge, have fun with it, and celebrate your progress.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a pleasure diving deep into these expressions with you and our listeners today.
And to all our listeners out there, we'd love to hear from you. Which idiom or phrasal verb resonated with you the most? How are you going to use them in your everyday conversations? Share your thoughts, your questions, and your experiences with us on social media. Let's keep this conversation going and keep exploring the amazing world of the English language together.
All right, so today we're going to be looking at something that you might think you've already mastered.
Oh.
Formal versus informal English.
Yeah.
You're probably already pretty good at it, right?
Most people are, yeah.
But we're going to go beyond just good.
Okay.
We're going for masterful.
I like it.
We're unlocking a secret code today
A secret code.
to help you tailor your communication
Okay.
to make the maximum impact possible.
Right.
Whether you're trying to, be super credible in the boardroom
Right.
or just bond better with your friends.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? It's not just about knowing the rules, but it's about understanding the why behind them.
The why.
Yeah, like why does a certain word choice make us feel a certain way? How do these subtle shifts in language really impact our perceptions and interactions.
Yeah, and we're basing this deep dive on a podcast called Fluent Conversations.
Okay.
And one of the things that really surprised me was how easy it is to sabotage yourself
Oh.
by using the wrong level of formality.
Oh, interesting.
Like, imagine you're at a networking event.
Okay.
And you're trying to, project this air of confidence and professionalism.
Yeah.
But instead of saying something like, "Excuse me, would you mind if I joined your conversation?"
Whoa.
You blurt out, "Yo, can I hang with you guys?"
Oof. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cringeworthy.
Right.
Yeah, it really highlights how these small choices we make can have a big impact on how we're perceived.
Totally.
It's not just about grammar. It's about social intelligence.
Ooh, I like that.
Understanding the unspoken rules of communication
Yeah.
and using them to your advantage.
Yeah, the podcast had this great example that really stuck with me.
Okay.
They compared the phrases, "I'm afraid I must decline your offer," to "Sorry, but I'll have to say no."
Yeah.
And it just made me realize that even when the message is the same, the feeling is totally different.
Absolutely. The first one feels very stiff and distant, almost like you're putting up a wall.
Right.
The second one is much warmer, more human,
Yeah.
even though it's still saying no.
Yeah.
It shows you can be direct, but you don't have to be harsh.
So how do we break down this code of formality?
Well,
Fluent Conversations identified 3 key elements.
okay.
And the first one is vocabulary.
Vocabulary, I think about it this way. Every word carries a certain weight, a certain formality level.
Okay.
For instance, require versus need, inquire versus ask.
Yeah.
Even something simple like assist versus help.
Oh, interesting.
These little swaps can instantly elevate your language or make it more approachable.
Okay, so it's not just about using fancy words.
Right.
It's about understanding which words fit the situation.
Exactly. It's about matching your vocabulary to the context and to the person that you're speaking with. And it goes beyond individual words.
Okay.
Sentence structure plays a big role as well.
Sentence structure.
Yeah, the formal language tends towards longer, more complex sentences,
Okay.
often using the passive voice.
Like the report was submitted by the deadline.
Yes.
Instead of I sent in the report on time.
That's a great example. The first one feels detached and objective, right?
Yeah.
More appropriate maybe for formal reports or academic writing.
Yeah.
Informal language, though, it embraces contractions and phrasal verbs. It has a more relaxed conversational flow.
Yeah.
It's about creating that sense of connection, immediacy.
And of course, we can't forget about punctuation and greetings.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously, "Dear Mr. Johnson" versus "Hey, Alex" is a pretty clear distinction.
Right.
But what about the subtle stuff?
That's where it gets interesting. Even something as simple as how you sign off an email.
Oh.
Sincerely versus best
Yeah.
can convey a lot about your relationship with the recipient
Right.
and the tone of the message. It's like the finishing touch that sets the seal on the whole communication.
So how do we put all this knowledge into practice?
Well,
It's one thing to understand the theory, but
Yeah.
how do we actually use it in different situations?
right. Well, that's where context comes in. Fluent Conversations did a good job at breaking it down,
Okay.
by looking at specific situations.
Okay.
Like emails or meetings or even casual chats.
That's super helpful. So let's start with emails. I feel like those can be tricky.
Oh, yeah.
Because you want to sound professional, but not like stiff,
Where emails often straddle that line between formal and informal.
Right.
You're not writing a legal document.
Yeah.
But you're also not texting your best friend.
Yeah.
So the podcast really emphasized, polite greetings,
Okay.
maintaining a professional tone throughout, and avoiding slang or like overly casual abbreviations.
So no, "Hey, dude, what's up?" It's my boss.
Probably a good idea to avoid that, yeah.
Okay, good rule of thumb. What about meetings and presentations?
Yeah.
Those feel like they're more on the formal end of the spectrum.
They often are, yeah, especially in professional settings.
Yeah.
The podcast really highlighted the importance of using transitional words and phrases
Okay.
to guide the listener through your ideas.
Okay.
Things like, furthermore, in addition, on the other hand, these little words can make your presentation sound much more structured and polished.
It's like you're building a case almost.
Exactly.
Leading them to your conclusion.
Right. And, those polite phrases we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
like could we possibly discuss or I'd like to propose,
Yeah.
those become even more important in these kind of settings.
Right.
Shows respect for everybody's time and input.
Okay, so we've covered emails and meetings. What about more casual interactions?
Sure.
Like friendly chats or texts.
Yeah, that's where you can loosen up a bit,
Okay.
Contractions, phrasal verbs, even emojis are all fair game.
Right.
Depending on your relationship with the person.
But how do you make sure that you're not crossing the line?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I once accidentally called my professor dude in an email.
Oh, no.
Oh, I wanted to die.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
I think the key is just being really mindful of your audience and the overall context.
Context.
Yeah. It's like choosing the right outfit, right?
Okay.
You wouldn't wear a ball gown to a backyard barbecue.
Right.
And you wouldn't show up to a job interview in sweatpants.
That's a great analogy.
So it's all about matching your communication style to the situation.
But Fluent Conversations also warn about some common pitfalls
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that we can fall into even when we're trying to be careful.
Right. One of the biggest ones is overusing fancy words.
Oh, yeah.
It's tempting to try and sound impressive,
Oh, totally.
but sometimes a simple word is way more effective than a complex one.
Right.
Clarity should always be the goal.
It's like, don't use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do.
Exactly. Another common pitfall is mixing formal and informal language
Uh-oh.
at the wrong time.
Right.
It creates this jarring effect, like hearing a classical pianist suddenly break into a rap song.
Oh, I'm cringing just thinking about it.
And, the podcast also mentioned cultural differences,
Oh, right.
which is something I hadn't really considered before.
Yeah.
That's a crucial element,
Yeah.
What's considered polite and respectful in one culture could be seen as overly formal
Right.
or even rude in another.
Wow.
For example, in some cultures, it's totally normal to address people by their first names, even in a professional setting.
Yeah.
But in other cultures, using titles and last names is essential even when you know the person well.
So it's not just about knowing the rules of English.
Right.
It's about understanding the cultural context as well.
It does. It adds a whole other layer of complexity,
Totally.
but it also makes communication so much more interesting.
Right.
It's about bridging those cultural gaps and finding ways to connect authentically.
I like that perspective. So we've talked about the pitfalls. What are some strategies
Okay.
for avoiding them? Is it just practice? Practice.
Absolutely. Practice is key.
Okay.
Fluent Conversations had some great suggestions like rereading emails before you send them,
Okay.
getting feedback from like a trusted colleague or friend,
Yeah.
and even role-playing different situations
Okay.
to get comfortable with both formal and informal styles.
I remember they also suggested that role play exercise.
Oh, yeah?
Where you write a formal email and then an informal text message about the same topic.
Yes.
Have you tried that one yet?
Oh, yeah.
It was
How'd it go?
it was challenging, but it was really eye-opening.
Interesting. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so I decided to use the scenario of asking for a deadline extension.
Okay, classic.
Yeah, right. So for the formal email to my professor, I channeled everything we talked about.
Okay, let me guess. Polite greetings, clear explanation, respectful tone.
Exactly. Yeah, it felt like I was stepping into a different persona.
It's interesting how language can do that, right? Like we can embody different roles just by changing the way we speak.
Yeah, and then writing the informal text to a friend about running late because of that same deadline.
Uh-huh.
It was like switching from a waltz to a hip-hop dance.
I bet what stood out to you the most, writing in those two contrasting styles.
It made me realize just how much we adjust our language without even thinking about it,
Yeah, it's subconscious.
Right, but being conscious of those choices
Right.
gives you this whole new level of control.
Yeah, that awareness is what makes a good communicator a great communicator.
Yeah, Fluent Conversations also mentioned how formal versus informal language has evolved over time.
Oh, that's a fascinating topic.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
It's crazy how language is like this living, breathing thing.
it is.
Constantly changing.
Yeah, the Nutcast talked about how centuries ago, formal language was so much more elaborate and ornate.
Right. Makes you appreciate how simple things are now.
Well, simpler, maybe, but also more nuanced,
That's true.
Think about all the changes we've seen with technology and the internet and mass media.
Right.
They've all had such a profound impact on the way we communicate.
Yeah.
Like the lines between formal and informal are constantly being blurred.
Totally. Like emojis and internet slang and abbreviations have become a part of everyday language.
It really makes you wonder what future historians will make of it all.
I know. It's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it shows how language is this reflection of our culture and values.
Mm-hmm.
What we see as acceptable now might have been unthinkable a few decades ago.
So how do we make sure we're communicating effectively in this constantly evolving landscape?
That's the question, isn't it? It feels like the rules are always changing.
Right.
I don't know if the rules are changing, but I think they're definitely expanding.
Okay. Yeah.
The key is to just stay curious and adaptable.
Okay.
Pay attention to how language is used in different situations.
Yeah.
Whether it's a news article or a social media post.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the nuances, the subtle shifts in tone and vocabulary.
So it's like we're all lifelong students of language.
We are.
Always observing and learning.
Exactly. And, Fluent Conversations reminded us that it's not about being right or wrong.
Right.
It's about using language as a tool to connect with others.
That's a good point. This whole deep dive has just been a great reminder that even something as familiar as language can still have hidden depths
It can.
and complexities. And by being more mindful of our choices, we can all become more effective communicators. We can build stronger relationships and just navigate the world with more confidence, you know?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up.
I think so too.
So listeners, remember, language is power.
It is.
Wield it wisely and watch your world expand. Okay, but really, think about it for a sec. How often are we all using words that kind of, sabotage what we're trying to say? Like little sneaky words making us sound less confident.
It happens more than you think. And it's wild how these tiny words can really affect how people see us. Especially at work, right?
Totally. Which is why we're diving into this article, 11 words you should stop saying immediately. We're not just going to list them, though. We're breaking down why they're bad, and most importantly, giving you swaps so you can sound more powerful.
Think of it like upgrading your communication one word at a time.
First up, the word just. Ugh, I'm so guilty of this. You're writing an email and it's like, I just wanted to follow up, or just a quick question. Why does just make us sound so unsure?
It's subtle, but just makes your request smaller, almost like you're apologizing for it. Imagine waiting to hear back about a project, and you're like, I just wanted to follow up on the proposal. What's that say?
Makes me sound hesitant, like I shouldn't even be asking.
Right. But what if you just said, I'm following up on the proposal? It's tiny, but you sound way more confident taking charge.
No more tiptoeing, you own it.
Exactly. And that shift can change how your message lands big time.
Okay, another tricky one. Actually, this feels like a trap almost.
Oh, it can be. Actually, often slips out when we're correcting someone or giving a different view. But imagine someone's like, actually, I think we should go a different way. How's that feel?
Like they're shutting down my idea before even thinking about it?
It can sound condescending, even if they just meant to add to the discussion. Taking out actually makes it more collaborative. Like instead of, actually, I have a question about that, you can say, I'm curious about this part.
More like inviting a chat, not shutting it down.
Perfect. Still saying your thing, but it keeps the flow going, respectfully.
Now, maybe this one feels like almost self-sabotage, wouldn't you say?
It is. You wouldn't use maybe if you were really sure of your idea, so why hedge?
I guess it's like we're scared to commit to our thoughts, you know?
And that hesitation can hurt your credibility, especially at work. Decisiveness often equals competence. Instead of, maybe we should consider this. We should consider this. Hear the difference.
It's like you're leading, not just dipping a toe in.
Right. Showing confidence in your idea, inviting others to follow.
Okay, this one bugs me. Saying sorry when there's no need. Why do we apologize for, existing, basically?
It's a thing, isn't it? Do we really need to apologize for asking a question or taking up space or just saying what we think?
No way. And all that apologizing can actually make us seem, smaller, less confident.
You're right. And the key is, there are way better ways to say things. Instead of, sorry to bother you, try thanks for your time, or I appreciate your input.
Shows respect without sounding unsure. It's like shifting from apologizing for existing to being grateful for their attention.
Small but powerful, right. Changes how you come across.
All right, another confidence killer, I think. It's everywhere, but it makes what we say weaker.
It's a verbal tick for lots of us. But think about how much stronger it is without it. Like, I think this is the best option versus this is the best option. Huge difference.
You're right. It's a fact now, not just an opinion, maybe.
And sure, sometimes you want to say it's your view, not like universal truth. But even then, there are better ways.
So instead of, I think, you could say, from my analysis, or based on what I've seen.
Exactly. You're owning your view, but it's more, sophisticated.
Like leveling up your communication, swapping out the wishy-washy stuff for strong, impactful language.
And that's what this deep dive's about, right? Giving you the tools to communicate clearly, confidently, like you mean it. It's crazy, right? How even little changes to how we talk can make us, more confident overall. When we pick words that sound sure, it changes how others see us, but also how we see ourselves.
That's like telling your own brain, hey, I got this.
Totally. And speaking of believing in yourself, let's talk about can't. This one messes with us, keeps us from, doing our best.
Oh, yeah, can't. It's so easy to just say, I can't do this, especially when something's hard.
It's almost automatic, but it's a trap. When we say can't, we're basically stopping ourselves from growing, from changing.
Like we're putting limits on ourselves before even trying.
And honestly, we can do way more than we think we can. So what if instead of I can't, we say something, well, more powerful? Like, I haven't learned this yet, or I'm still figuring it out.
I like that. It's not saying you'll never do it, just that you're on the way there.
Exactly. And that small change can help you stay motivated, keep going when things get tough.
It reminds me of that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. What we say really does affect what we believe.
So true. So let's pick words that lift us up, both when we talk to ourselves and to others.
Okay, almost done with the list, but a couple more big ones. Let's do but and. I mean, they're not bad words, but how we use them matters, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about the situation and what you're trying to say, but often goes after something positive and it kind of ruins it.
It's like giving a compliment and then taking it back. You did great on that presentation, but I think you could have been more engaging. Oof.
Exactly. The but erases the good stuff you just said.
No.
Makes people feel, I don't know, discouraged.
So what's better?
And swap out the but for and it's way more constructive. You did great on that presentation, and I think we can work together to make it even more engaging.
You're not just criticizing, you're helping. It's about fixing things, not just pointing out what's wrong.
And that's such a good attitude to have, right? At work, anywhere.
All right, gotta address the big one. Literally, people misuse this all the time. It's almost funny how wrong it gets.
Yeah, it's become this word people use to emphasize stuff, even when it's not actually true.
Yeah.
But using it wrong makes you sound less credible, like you don't know what you're talking about.
I think it shows how important it is to use the right words. When we choose carefully, we say what we mean more clearly, and it has more impact.
Couldn't agree more. It's about respecting how powerful words are and using them to your advantage. So let's all try to use literally, correctly, and really all words, thoughtfully.
Okay, before we go on, gotta mention kind of and sort of again. They seem small, but they weaken what you're trying to say.
Oh, they're so wishy-washy. They make you sound uncertain, like you don't really care. Imagine telling your boss, I'm kind of excited about this new project. Not exactly inspiring, huh?
Sounds like you'd rather be doing something else.
Exactly. So instead of that, let's use words that are, stronger, more definite. I'm intrigued by that. Instead of I'm sort of interested. More specific, more interesting.
And it shows you're really paying attention, involved in the conversation.
Right on. Now, sticking with words that fill space but don't add anything, let's talk about like. It's supposed to connect with people, but it can actually make you sound less smart.
It's so ironic. It's like people say all the time, especially when they're nervous.
But it's even better. Just pausing.
Yes. Silence is way more effective than filling the space with, nothing.
Gives your brain a second to think, so you can choose better words.
And it makes you sound more thoughtful, calm, which can be really powerful.
And while we're at it, how about, this one comes up when we're not sure if the other person's getting what we're saying. We need them to agree with us.
It's like we're doubting ourselves, even though we're the ones with the ideas.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
You know what you're talking about. You can explain it clearly. Trust yourself. Let that confidence show.
That's a good point. We don't always need someone to tell us we're right. We can just own it.
Exactly. Now, one last thing about how our language affects how we interact with people. We've talked about specific words, but it's also about the vibe we give off.
Right. Sometimes it's not just the words, but how we say them.
Totally. Think about, I have to do this versus I get to do this. It's just a different way of looking at it, but it changes how you feel about it.
It's like turning something you have to do into something you want to do.
It's about feeling like you have control, even when things are tough or boring.
I love that. We really can choose how we see things just by how we talk about them.
And that's kind of the main point of all this. It's not about banning certain words. It's about being aware of what we say, picking words that show what we believe, make us feel confident, and help us really connect with people.
Honestly, I'm kind of fired up now to use all this stuff. It's amazing how just changing a few words can make such a difference in, everything.
It really shows you how powerful language is, right? We don't always realize how much what we say shapes our whole experience.
So for our listeners, what's one thing they can do today to start using all this?
Good question. I think the best way is to just pick one thing, one word from our list that, stood out to you. Maybe you use it too much or you think it's holding you back.
Okay, let's say I pick just. What then?
Try to, completely stop using it for a week. Pay attention to when you want to say it in emails, conversations, even just thinking to yourself.
Like a little challenge, see what happens when you change just one word.
Exactly. I bet you'll be surprised. See how people react when you're more direct, more confident. And notice how it makes you feel. You might find that not saying just makes you sound more sure of yourself. And D actually makes you more confident.
So it's like teaching your brain to use better words by default.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's like exercise. The more you use those confident words, the more natural they'll feel.
Makes sense. So it's not about being perfect right away. It's about getting better over time.
Exactly. And hey, you don't have to do this alone. Tell a friend about the episode or a coworker and help each other out. You could even make it fun. Point out when someone slips up.
That's a good idea. It's always easier to stick with something when you have someone to do it with.
And who knows, maybe you'll start this chain reaction of confident communication at work everywhere.
What a great thought. Well, we've definitely given everyone a lot to think about today. It's been, really interesting and inspiring. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how to use words to be more confident and clear.
It's been great diving into this with you. And to everyone listening, remember, what we say really matters. So let's choose our words carefully. And until next time, stay curious, stay confident, and keep on learning.
All right. So are you ready to really boost your English fluency? I mean, take it to that next level.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Well, today we're diving deep into phrasal verbs.
Those are essential.
They really are. They're like the secret code to sounding really natural,
Yes.
Especially if you're already pretty comfortable with the basics of English.
Right, you got to get those phrasal verbs down.
Exactly.
And what I think is so fascinating about them is the way they kind of weave themselves into just everyday English.
Yeah, it's like you can't escape them, can you?
No, you can't. And they're not just about casual chit-chat.
Right.
They pop up everywhere. We'll see them in professional settings, travel scenarios, even when you're talking about learning new things or improving yourself.
Yeah, you're right. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
We've got 25 essential phrasal verbs to unpack today, and I'm telling you, you'll be surprised by how their meanings can shift depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's true. It's sometimes the same phrasal verb can have so many different meanings.
Right.
If they're these little chameleons.
Right.
Blending in, adding that extra layer of meaning.
Subtle mastery, huh?
Yes. That's what sets apart a fluent speaker.
For sure. So let's start with those everyday conversations, the ones we have all the time. I'm thinking about turn up and run into. They seem so simple on the surface.
Right. Yeah.
But I bet there's more to them than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Take turn up, for example.
Okay.
If someone says he didn't turn up for the meeting, that kind of has a negative connotation to it,
Yeah.
right?
You're like, where were you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Implies a lack of responsibility. Maybe even a little bit of disrespect.
For sure.
But, if you're at a party and the volume's too low, you might say, can you turn up the music?
Yeah, that's true.
Same verb, totally different vibe, right?
It is. It's like the context around the phrasal verb, it colors it, gives it that extra layer of meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And run into kind of has that element of chance, like surprise. If you say, I ran into an old friend, that paints a much more vivid picture than just saying oh, I met an old friend.
Right. I see what you mean.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. You can almost feel the surprise and joy in that encounter.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the work and business category.
Okay.
And I noticed in this section, look into and come up with. These are verbs you'd probably hear, in an office setting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe in a boardroom, who knows?
Yeah. Boardroom, meeting, these verbs are all about clarity and action in a professional setting.
Right. Being efficient.
Efficient. Yeah. If you say, we need to look into this issue that sounds a lot more, proactive. It's more decisive than just saying we need to investigate.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And come up with, that one's all about that creative problem solving.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
I like that. So it's almost like these phrasal verbs cut through all the fluff.
Yes.
They just get straight to the point, which is so important at work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Especially in a fast-paced environment.
Yeah. And imagine you're in a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And you're struggling to express those key actions.
It would be painful.
Yeah. So Mastering these, can make you a much more effective communicator at work.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's get ready to explore the world a little bit. Travel and socializing. When it comes to this, I thought about pick up and drop off.
Yes.
They're essential for getting around, making plans,
Absolutely. I mean, think about that classic travel phrase. Can you pick me up from the airport?
It's so common.
It's so common.
Yeah.
It's direct. It's clear. It gets the message across.
Effortless.
Yeah, effortless. Yeah. And drop off too. Like, I'll drop you off at the station on my way. Makes, coordinating plans so much smoother.
Yeah, super smooth.
Super smooth.
You know what's interesting about those two is it highlights the social aspect of language,
I know.
If you offer to pick someone up or drop them off, it's more than just the action, It kind of conveys a sense of, I don't know, like helpfulness, consideration.
Right, you're going out of your way for them a little.
Exactly. Okay, and speaking of subtle shifts in meaning, check-in. That one seems to have like multiple personalities.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Depending on the context.
It does.
Right.
You've hit the nail on the head there. Check in at a hotel, like that's a formal procedure, right? Yeah. But if you say check in with a friend, that's just casual.
Totally different.
Totally different. It implies like that you care.
Right. You're just seeing how they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a perfect example of how, phrasal verbs just adapt and evolve, They just change.
Yes. Yes, they do. They do.
Depending on the situation. All right, it's time to level up our skills even more. Learning and self-improvement. I'm intrigued by catch up on and figure out, they seem to like capture the essence of personal growth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really do. Catch up on, that kind of implies that you're making an effort, right?
Yeah.
Like a conscious effort to, stay current, expand your knowledge.
Yeah, it's like active learning.
Yes. And figure out, has that problem-solving vibe, right?
It's like that aha moment.
Yes, it's about like overcoming challenges, pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Which is like part of personal development, right?
Absolutely. Embracing those aha moments.
Yeah.
And recognizing that, learning it's a journey.
It never ends.
It never ends. What's fascinating is how these verbs kind of empower you to like talk about your learning journey.
Yeah, to actually articulate it.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
So thinking about those learning goals, is there a particular phrasal verb from this category that like resonates with you right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Something that you could see yourself using, in your self-improvement journey.
Let me think. I think figure out, actually. I like that one because, well, I am always trying to figure out new ways to approach problems.
Yeah.
Or just learn from my experiences.
Absolutely.
It's a verb that shows that continuous growth.
Yes.
Which I find motivating, It never stops.
It never stops.
So I like that one.
It's like figure out becomes a reminder to just stay curious.
Right.
And embrace that whole learning process.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know what you're gonna learn next when you're trying to figure things out.
Exactly.
I like that.
That's a good one.
It really is amazing how much meaning these little verbs pack. They really make our communication so much more dynamic.
They do, yeah. It's like they unlock fluency somehow.
Yeah.
Make English sound, well, more natural.
Speaking of unlocking things,
Yeah.
I have a fun idea.
Okay.
How about we do a little quiz just to test what we know about these phrasal verbs so far?
Oh, I love a quiz.
Yeah.
Let's do it. See if our listeners have been paying attention.
Okay, first question. Imagine you're working on a project and it's just not going anywhere. You finally decide to just stop working on it completely.
Like all the time.
Right. So which phrasal verb would you use? Would you say that you gave up on the project or looked into it or maybe turned up at the meeting?
Okay, so we're looking for the verb that means to just like stop completely, abandon it.
Exactly. And the answer is
Gave up.
gave up. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave up on that project.
It definitely doesn't feel good, but
Yeah.
it happens. Sometimes things just don't work out.
It's a fact of life. All right, ready for the next question?
Get me with it.
Okay, so imagine you're trying to understand like a really complex problem
Yeah.
and you want to get to the root of it, like all the little details.
Okay, so like you're really trying to solve it, not just scratch the surface.
Exactly, yeah. So which phrasal verb fits best here? Would you figure out the problem, go over the details, or run into a solution?
So this is all about being really analytical, right? Like really digging into the problem.
Yes, exactly. Thinking it through.
So the answer must be
Go over.
Go over. That's right.
Yeah, you're going over all the details.
Okay, last question. You're getting ready to give a presentation.
Okay.
And you want to practice it beforehand. Which verb describes that? Would you show up at the presentation, come up with a new idea, or maybe run through your speech?
This one is all about getting ready, rehearsing, making sure you know everything.
Yeah. Making sure it all flows, all the pieces are in place.
Exactly. So the answer has to be
Run through.
run through.
Yeah.
You got to run through that presentation.
Make sure you're prepared for anything.
Exactly.
Well done, listeners. You guys are pros. You're really getting the hang of these verbs.
You're going to be fluent in no time.
But this is just the beginning. I mean, there's so much more out there, when it comes to phrasal verbs.
Oh yeah, so many. It's like a whole other world.
It is like another level of fluency.
It is.
So before we finish our deep dive today, I want to talk about how to actually make these 25 verbs part of your everyday English.
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand them,
Right.
but how do you actually use them naturally,
That's the real challenge. It's all about like bridging that gap between knowledge and actually applying it.
Yeah.
The good news is with phrasal verbs, like they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to how native speakers use them in conversations, in movies, and songs.
Yeah, that's good advice. Like just be more aware.
Be more aware. Yeah, you'll start to notice patterns and kind of pick up on the nuances.
Yeah, it's like immersive learning,
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
Try using these phrasal verbs in your own conversations.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You might stumble a bit at first.
Yeah, of course.
But that's okay. That's all part of the learning process.
Right, you're not going to get it perfect the first time.
Exactly. Yeah. But the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Of course. It's like anything, right? Practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
But sometimes just like jumping in can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips to make the learning process a bit more, organized?
Oh, absolutely. Like a great technique is to use flashcards.
Oh, yeah.
Like write the phrasal verb on one side and then maybe like an example sentence on the other.
Yeah, classic.
Classic, yeah. That way you're not just like memorizing the definition. You're actually seeing it in action.
Right. You see how it works in a sentence.
Exactly, yeah. Another good strategy is to keep like a phrasal verb journal.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Every time you encounter a new one, just jot it down.
Yeah, like your own personal dictionary.
Exactly. And you can add an example sentence too.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed at how quickly your vocabulary will grow.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Before we wrap up completely, I'm just curious, do you have like a go-to phrasal verb? One that you just use all the time?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think mine would probably be breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
It's so versatile. You can break down a problem, you can break down a concept, you can even break down a wall.
Yeah, it's true.
It just means to analyze something, make it more simple, make it more manageable.
Yeah, and it works in so many situations. I think that's what's so cool about phrasal verbs, right?
Yeah.
They're adaptable.
Yes.
And once you start using them, your English just sounds so much more natural.
It really does.
Yeah.
So just remember, this deep dive, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes. Learning should be fun.
It should be fun, yeah.
Yeah.
The more you enjoy it, the more you'll learn.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day-to-day, what phrasal verbs are you going to try to use?
Yeah, good question.
Will you brush up on your skills? Will you look out for some new opportunities?
I might try to dream up a new adventure.
Ooh, I like that one. The possibilities are endless.
They are. It's been so fun diving into the world of phrasal verbs with you.
It has been.
Happy learning, everyone.
And that's a wrap on our exploration of these fascinating little, bundles of words. We hope you feel inspired to embrace phrasal verbs, make them a part of your everyday English, because fluency is a journey, not a destination, right? And every step you take brings you closer to mastering this amazing language. Thanks for joining us. Okay, have you ever felt like native English speakers are just talking way too fast?
Yeah.
It's like they're speaking some kind of secret code or just mumbling.
Right.
You shared a masterclass with me about speaking and understanding faster English, so we are diving into that today.
Yeah, and I think it'll be great to not just figure out how to understand rapid fire English, but also how to speak it more naturally and fluently ourselves.
For sure. I saw in the source material, they talk about this shadowing technique. I'm really curious to learn more about that. But first, Why does English sound so fast to non-native speakers in the first place?
I think it's a few different things all coming together at once. One big thing is connected speech,
Okay.
which is basically how words kind of blend together. Like,
Yeah.
instead of what do you want? It sounds more like wadaya wanna.
Yeah. So it's not that the words themselves are faster. It's just they all kind of...
They mush together.
Yeah, they get mashed together, yeah. And then there's all those contractions too, right?
Absolutely. Contractions and reductions are everywhere in natural English. And I think they definitely add to the speed. Things like, going to do, becoming gonna, or want to, shrinking to wanna.
Yeah.
It's like we like to be lazy with our words, but it makes it hard for people to understand.
Yeah. Now, what is this schwa thing I keep hearing about?
Yeah, so the schwa...
What is that?
The schwa is a tricky one. It's like this chameleon vowel that changes based on the sounds that are around it.
Oh, okay.
It's this really unstressed, kind of like mumbly sound you hear in words like, the classic example is banana. It's not banana, it's more like bunana.
Yeah.
Just becomes this lazy sound.
So like the schwa, it can pop up in any word then.
Yeah.
Not just, banana is the one everyone uses.
It can even happen a bunch of times in the same word. Think of the word photography.
Yeah.
It's not photography, it's more like photography.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
The schwa can really change how a word sounds.
It really is like a secret code. I think an audio example would be really good here.
Yeah.
The masterclass actually gives an example of, I should have told you earlier, both at kind of a slower speed and a native speed.
Okay.
So let's listen to that.
Sounds good.
Audio plays, I should have told you earlier, followed by, I should have told you earlier. Yeah. It's crazy.
It does.
It's almost like two different languages. I can totally see why this is a challenge.
Yeah. But what's cool is that you don't necessarily need to hear every single sound
Right.
to get what's being said. Our brains are actually really good at filling in the missing information.
That's good to know because, yes, some of that is impossible to understand. Okay, so how do we train our ears to be better at decoders of all this?
Well, one really good way is to practice something called chunking.
Okay.
And basically, instead of getting stuck on each individual word, you try to hear phrases as units.
Oh.
It's kind of like how we read, right? We're not focusing on each letter. We group the letters into words.
Yeah.
And then phrases.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, sure. Imagine someone do you want to grab some lunch later?
Yeah.
If you try to pick out every single sound,
Yeah.
it's just a jumble, right?
Yeah.
But if you kind of chunk it together in your mind, you want to grab some lunch later,
Right.
it becomes way more clear.
Oh, yeah.
So you kind of get the big idea.
Yeah, you're listening for the key idea and not every little word.
Exactly.
Cool. That kind of leads into the next thing, right? About listening in layers.
It does, yeah.
This sounds very Zen-like.
It is. It's think about listening to a song for the first time. You're not going to catch all the words,
Right.
all the lyrics, all the nuances right away, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with English.
So we're listening to the same thing multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay, and what are the layers?
Well, so on the first pass, you're just listening for the gist. Who's talking? What are they talking about?
Right.
And then on the second listen, you try to pick out keywords that'll give you more context.
Okay.
And then on the third listen, that's when you can really zero in on the tricky bits,
Okay.
the connected speech, maybe those contractions you couldn't quite pick out the first time.
Okay, it's kind of like peeling back an onion, right?
Exactly.
You get a little more information every time.
You got it.
Cool. We actually have a dialogue example in the masterclass that we can use to try this
Perfect.
audio plays. Hey, do you want to grab some coffee? Yeah, but let me finish this first. Cool, I'll meet you in 10.
Okay.
So how would we use this layered listening for this little coffee shop conversation?
Okay, so on that first listen, you're getting, two people are going to get coffee.
Yeah.
Easy. Then on that second layer, you might pick out keywords like coffee, maybe finish this, and then 10 minutes.
Okay.
So now you're getting a better picture of what's going on.
Right.
And then finally, on the third listen, you can really zoom in. Okay, do you want it?
Yeah.
How are they using those contractions and reductions?
Okay, yeah, that makes it much less intimidating.
Yeah.
Breaking it down like that. Now, what about speaking faster? How do we do that without sounding like,
Yeah.
some kind of robot?
Like a robot reading a dictionary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, this masterclass talks a lot about sounding natural and fluent, not just talking faster.
Right.
Like you said, we don't want to sacrifice clarity just to sound fast.
Yeah, so Are there specific techniques for this?
Well, remember all those contractions and reductions we talked about?
Yeah.
Those are really important for speaking fluently, too.
So instead of saying, like, I'm going to the store, I should say, I'm going to go to the store.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Oh,
And it might feel a little weird at first,
it does.
but I promise it just makes your English sound smoother and more effortless.
Okay. But how do we actually get used to doing that?
Right. Well, that's where that shadowing technique comes in.
Okay.
So you are going to be like a vocal chameleon. You listen to a native speaker.
Yeah. Say a phrase or a sentence. You pause it, and then you try to repeat exactly what they said,
Okay.
matching their pronunciation, intonation, and speed.
So, okay. So like, what are you doing? I should say more like, what are you doing?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And you can start slow, and then as you get more comfortable, you can speed it up.
That's cool. Are there any other techniques we can use?
Yeah. Another one is linking.
Okay.
So like native speakers, we just do it naturally, but it's something that you might have to practice consciously if you're learning.
Okay.
So like, for instance, not at all often becomes not at all.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the tan sound from not blends with that vowel sound of at.
Oh, that's so subtle. Wow.
It is.
I want to try a little fast reading challenge. Can I?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So the source material has the sentence, would you like to go to the movies later?
Yeah.
How would a native speaker actually say that?
Probably something like, would ya? Like, go to the movies later.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Okay, so I'm noticing would you becomes would ya, to is like ta, and the like disappears before movies.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's all about those smooth transitions.
Yeah. Okay. I can already tell I need to practice that one. We've been practicing here in this nice, perfect little world, right?
Right.
How do we take this into the real world where there's all kinds of accents and people talking at all different speeds?
That is the real challenge, right? Because the real world is full of all these variations, different accents, slang, speaking styles.
Yeah.
It's really like taking what you learned in the classroom and then...
Throwing yourself into the deep end.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that feeling.
Yeah.
It was like scary. So what advice does the masterclass have for us for bridging that gap?
Well, I mean, really, it's about exposure and practice.
Okay.
The more you immerse yourself in the language, the more prepared you'll be to handle those real-world variations.
What are some good ways to get that real-world practice?
Well, they talk about watching TV shows and movies. You can start with the subtitles on to get the gist, and then challenge yourself.
Right.
Turn the subtitles off. See how much you can understand.
Yeah, I find even watching with English subtitles like helps me pick up stuff I might not have noticed otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's podcasts,
Okay.
which are great because you can adjust the speed.
Right.
You can start slow, work your way up.
What about actually talking with native speakers?
Well, that's the best practice you can get, right?
Right.
Find language exchange partners, maybe join some groups online, or even,
Yeah.
if you're brave enough,
Yeah.
strike up conversations with people you meet.
I remember I was so scared to talk to native speakers when I was learning English,
Yeah.
but I realized like pretty quickly, most people are really patient and they appreciate the effort you're making.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it really is about just building that confidence and not being afraid to like mess up.
For sure. Don't be afraid to ask people to slow down or repeat themselves.
Yeah.
People are happy to help.
Yeah. So we really need to embrace that messiness, right? It's going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
Now, the masterclass has one final challenge for us before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Okay.
They want us to imagine we're hanging out with friends, and they ask, hey, deal up for a movie tonight.
Fun.
Okay, I'm ready for this challenge. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Audio plays. Hey, you up for a movie tonight? Dunno. What's playing? That new sci-fi one looks cool. All right, let me check the show times.
Oh, casual, fast English.
So what techniques are we hearing in this?
Okay, well, right away we hear that contraction, ya,
Right.
instead of you, and then what's playing. It combines like what is and playing
Girl.
into one little chunk.
I noticed they're saying do know instead of don't know, and then
Yeah.
let me instead of let me.
It's amazing how those little things make such a big difference.
Yeah, it's like a little puzzle.
It is.
All these pieces, you can even hear that linking, like looks cool becomes looks cool. That's so cool. Okay, so now the challenge is to imagine how we would respond
Yes.
using everything we've talked about.
Exactly. And there's no one right answer.
Right.
It's about using what you've learned and seeing how you can apply it to this conversation.
So we're leaving you with that challenge for now, dear listener. How would you respond to this invitation to go to the movies? We'll explore this more in the next part of our deep dive.
It's crazy to think about how all these like tiny little things, the contractions, the schwa sound, linking, it all adds up to make English sound so fast.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, it's not really about speed, is it?
No, not really. It's more about understanding each other.
Right, being able to communicate.
Exactly.
I think that's easy to forget when you get so caught up in like the rules and the technical stuff.
It's easy to get bogged down in that.
Yeah.
And forget why we're even learning the language.
Totally. I like that this masterclass really focuses on that, like the human element of language. Yeah. It does. It gives some good advice about how to turn all this stuff we're talking about into like real fluency.
That's what I'm curious about, because I feel like I've hit walls so many times where I'm just like, I'm not getting any better. Like, what's the secret to getting over those plateaus?
Well, it's not really a secret. I think a lot of people they don't do it. Yeah. But it's practice. Yeah. It's consistent practice.
Okay, so not just like cramming.
Right, not just cramming a bunch of words and grammar rules.
Right, yeah.
But really making it a habit.
Okay, yeah. So what would a good practice routine look like? Say I'm like just starting out.
Well, I mean, even if you could just do like 15, 20 minutes a day of focused listening.
Okay.
That's huge. It could be podcasts, TV shows, whatever you enjoy.
Right.
You could even just listen to conversations happening around you.
Right. That's such a good, like, easy tip, you know?
It is. It is.
You don't need anything special for that.
Just like go to a coffee shop, listen to people talking.
Yeah. Exactly. What about for speaking practice?
Speaking practice is a little tougher.
Yeah.
Because you have to actually,
find someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Right?
But there's a lot of groups online.
Uh-huh.
Language exchange apps and things like that.
Yeah.
You could even record yourself speaking and then listen back.
I used to do that.
Yeah.
It's so helpful.
Right. You catch all these little mistakes.
It is a little cringy, though.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But it's like having your own little language coach.
It is. And you said it earlier, too. It's okay to make mistakes.
Absolutely. That's how we learn.
That's how we learn, yeah.
Now let's talk about the shadowing technique. We kind of touched on it earlier. Can you explain a little bit more about how that works and why it's so good?
It's basically karaoke for language learning.
Okay.
You listen to a native speaker.
Yeah.
Try to repeat exactly what they're saying.
Okay.
Matching their rhythm, intonation, everything.
So it's like a workout for your mouth?
It is. It is. Getting it to do all those weird sounds.
Exactly. And you could do it with anything.
Okay.
Like a podcast, a song,
Oh, cool.
a scene from a movie.
That sounds fun. What are some tips for making practice in general more interesting?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people think of it as a chore, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to find stuff that you're actually interested in.
Right.
Like if you love to cook.
Yeah.
Watch cooking shows in English. If you're a sports fan, listen to sports commentary.
It's so true. Like when it's something I like, it feels like I'm like not even trying.
Right, because you're actually paying attention.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, just find ways to connect your interests with language learning.
Right. It shouldn't be boring.
No, it should be fun.
Yeah. Even when we are enjoying it, I feel like we all hit those like plateaus. Yeah. How do we deal with that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that progress isn't always like a straight line, You're going to have times when you feel like you're rocketing forward and times where you feel like you're just stuck.
Yeah, like going backwards almost.
Right, and that's totally normal.
Yeah.
But you can't give up.
Right.
Just keep practicing and trust the process.
It's like when you're working out, right?
It is.
You hit those plateaus, it's like, I'm doing all this and nothing's happening.
Right. But just like with fitness, consistency is key.
Okay.
Just keep at it.
And celebrate those like little wins. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get focused on this big like end goal.
Yeah.
And forget how far you've come.
Right. It's like looking at old pictures of yourself like, oh my God.
Exactly. You make so much progress.
Yeah. And that actually brings us to like confidence. Right.
It does.
Because when you can understand and be understood, you feel more confident. You feel more like able to.
You're not just a passive observer. You're an active participant.
Yeah. A whole new world opens up, basically.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of technical stuff.
We have.
And resources and even like the emotional and social benefits of being fluent. I know this masterclass has one last challenge for us before we wrap up this section of our deep dive.
Okay. I'm ready.
So, Remember that movie night situation we talked about?
Yeah.
Our friends invited us to go to a movie,
Yeah, they asked you up for a movie tonight.
and we heard all the back and forth about,
Yep.
what's playing and everything.
What time? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now the challenge is, what would you say? There's no script this time.
No, I like it.
Just, like, what would you say?
It's like they're saying, okay, here are all the tools. Now you go.
Exactly, yeah.
Make something beautiful.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
Yeah, and I think that's what this whole deep dive is about, right?
There it is, yeah.
It's not about memorizing.
Yeah.
It's about being able to actually use the language.
It's about empowering you to use the language.
Yeah. So, dear listener, that's the challenge for you. Put yourself back in that situation.
Yep.
What would you say? How would you use these techniques we've talked about?
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Just, like, what's your gut reaction?
Yeah.
Have fun with it.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to try.
Okay.
So if my friends asked if I was up for a movie, I might say, yeah, totally. What are we thinking of watching?
Perfect.
I'm using a contraction.
You are.
I'm keeping it casual.
You are.
And I'm expressing enthusiasm.
Yes, you are.
I love it. And I'm already feeling more confident just thinking about,
I love that.
using all this stuff.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? Is finding your own voice.
Yeah.
And just being comfortable.
Awesome. So, dear listener, we want you to find your voice.
Yes.
Experiment, try new things, push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit.
And remember, fluency is not like an end point.
Right.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is, yeah.
Full of ups and downs, and it's all about connection,
It is, yeah.
Connecting with other people.
Okay, I think this is a good place to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and wrap up our deep dive into speaking and understanding fast English. I'm still thinking about that movie night challenge.
Yeah,
I like how it makes us actually, use what we learned.
it is. It's a good way to, bridge the gap between the ideas and actually putting it into practice.
Totally. It reminds us this isn't just about, memorizing rules. It's about, using language to actually talk with people.
Right, language is about connection.
Yeah. This deep dive has been awesome.
Yeah.
Can we do a quick recap of what we talked about?
Yeah, for sure.
Just to make sure I've got all the key takeaways.
Okay, well, I think the first thing to remember is that speed is just one part of being fluent.
Okay.
You don't want to just talk fast.
Yeah.
You got to be clear.
Yeah.
And you got to sound natural.
Right. So it's a balance.
Exactly.
Okay. And one way to do that is using all those contractions and reductions.
Yeah, definitely. Those are super important.
Yeah.
They really make your English flow.
Now, what about chunking?
Oh, yeah, chunking's huge.
Yeah.
Training yourself to hear those chunks of words instead of every single word.
It's like we're upgrading our brains.
It is. It's like a software update
Yeah.
for your ears.
That's a good way to put it. And then we have that layered listening approach. First the gist, then the keywords, then all the subtle details.
Right, like connected speech and all that.
Okay, and then for speaking, we've got that shadowing technique.
Ah, yes, shadowing.
That was really cool. Having a pronunciation coach in your ear.
Exactly. And you can do it with anything.
Right, any material that interests you.
Yeah.
So we've got all the tools. Now what's the secret to putting this all together? What's the magic formula?
Well, again, it's not really a secret. It's consistent practice.
Oh.
Finding things that you enjoy.
Right. It should be fun.
It should be fun, yeah. It shouldn't feel like a chore.
Totally. Because when it's fun, you actually want to do it.
Exactly. And you'll learn faster that way, too.
Yeah. So find things that you're into, like movies, podcasts.
Yeah. Or connect with other people who are learning.
Yeah.
You can all practice together.
Now we all know fluency isn't you don't just arrive there one day.
No, it's a journey.
Yeah.
With lots of twists and turns.
Yeah. And we're going to mess up along the way.
Oh, for sure.
You just got to keep going.
Absolutely. Celebrate the wins and learn from the mistakes.
I think that's a great way to wrap up our deep dive.
Yeah.
So, dear listener, hopefully this has given you some new ideas for how to take your English to the next level.
Yeah. Keep practicing and keep exploring.
And keep connecting with people.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, language is about connecting.
So true. That's it for our deep dive into speaking and understanding fast English.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time.